All right, let's talk about India. It's one of the fastest growing economies on the planet, rolling out some incredibly ambitious policies meant to completely transform the nation. But here's the big question. Is all this rapid development really sustainable? Today, we're going to dig into the policies, the promises, and the critical questions about India's path forward.
So we're starting with what we're calling a nation's big question. And, that's because when an economy this massive and this fast-moving makes big choices, the stakes couldn't be higher, not just for its billion-plus citizens, but really for the entire world. You see, over the last decade or so, India has launched a series of just hugely ambitious programs. We're not talking about small adjustments here. We're talking about massive initiatives. Things like Make in India or the Smart Cities mission, all promising really rapid growth, world-class infrastructure, and a new spot on the world stage as a global leader. The vision is incredibly clear and it's very bold. But this brings us right to the heart of the matter for this whole explainer. Is the country actually building truly sustainable, visionary development from the ground up? Or is it creating this powerful but maybe superficial appearance of progress while some deeper, structural problems are still there? That's the core tension we're really going to unpack. Okay, so let's dive into the core of this debate. Because on one hand, you have the official vision of a modern, booming India. But on the other, you've got these persistent, nagging questions about what's actually happening on the ground for everyday people.
What's fascinating is that we're seeing two completely different stories being told at the same time. The official narrative, it's all about gleaming new highways, futuristic smart cities, and huge international events like the G20 summit that project this image of a rising global power. But then the critique asks a different set of questions. Is this growth actually high quality? Is human development, things like health and education, and job creation keeping up with these impressive visuals?
So to get a better handle on this tension, we're going to break it all down into three critical debates that policy experts are really focused on right now. It boils down to jobs, money, and execution. First up is maybe the most persistent and significant area of concern, what we're calling the employment puzzle. This is the one issue that just doesn't seem to go away, even when the big economic numbers look pretty good. So here's the crucial point. Despite really strong GDP figures, youth unemployment is stubbornly high. The massive informal sector, which is where most of the workforce is under a lot of pressure. And a lot of the new jobs that are being created, well, they tend to be low-paying or insecure. Think gig economy jobs without long-term benefits. Economists have a term for this, jobless growth. And it's a huge worry because it can actually make inequality worse.
All right, let's shift gears to our second big debate, which is all about where the money is actually going. Because when a government decides how to spend its budget, it's making a really clear statement about what it values most. And this really gets to the heart of the spending debate. Critics are pointing to this heavy emphasis on these large, very visible megaprojects, and they're asking a pretty important question. Does this focus come at the expense of foundational sectors like public health, school education, and rural support? It's a classic debate, really, physical infrastructure versus human capital.
And if we dig a little deeper, the concern is that while these big projects are super impressive, their social returns, their direct benefit to people's well-being, can be a lot slower to show up. This kind of focus can strain the budget for other essentials, and it raises some serious questions about long-term investment in things like agricultural resilience, which affects hundreds of millions of people's livelihoods.
And that brings us perfectly to our third critical debate, the journey from a policy plan to real-world impact. Because let's be honest, a great idea on paper is only as good as its execution on the ground.
A lot of observers have pointed to several challenges here. For one, a more centralized approach to making decisions can sometimes clash with the realities in India's incredibly diverse states. And what happens then? Well, major programs can face big delays, they can run way over budget, and the execution is just uneven. This creates what people call a perception gap, a real disconnect between what's announced in the capital and what people actually experience in their day-to-day lives.
There's a key idea from development experts that really captures the essence of all these critiques, and it's that the ultimate scorecard for any nation isn't just about the steel and concrete. It's about the health, the education, and the opportunities that are available to its people. But of course, that's just one side of a very complex story. To get the full picture, we have to understand the government's perspective and its defense of these very policies.
Now, officials strongly defend their record, and they point to some undeniable achievements. The Digital India Initiative, for example, has led to this historic expansion of connectivity and digital payment systems. The use of direct benefit transfers has streamlined welfare payments, and the massive push in building highways and rail networks is seen as a key engine for future growth, all of which contributes to India's rising stature on the world stage.
And this right here is the government's core argument. They say that what we're seeing is a deep structural transformation, and these kinds of things just take time. The policies of today, they argue, are laying the essential foundation for a prosperous, developed India tomorrow.
So, with these two competing narratives in mind, where does that leave us? Well, the path forward is really going to be defined by how the country answers a few absolutely crucial questions.
First and foremost, can India figure out how to make its impressive economic growth actually create more high-quality jobs? This is the vital link that connects that growth to widespread prosperity for everyone.
Second, will the country find the right balance? Can investment in its people, in things like health and education, rise to match the massive investment we've seen in physical infrastructure?
And third, can that gap between the big announcement and the on-the-ground reality finally be closed? Can the execution of these policies live up to the incredible ambition with which they were designed? Because in the end, the success of any development model for any country isn't judged by headlines or GDP points alone. It's judged by something far more fundamental: lasting, meaningful improvements in the lives of its citizens. And that is the metric that will ultimately give us the answer to our big opening question.